even thinking about weight, how thyroid helps with weight management through the metabolism. Dr. Jason Fung, I remember reading his book, and that was 20 years ago, The Fat Thermostat. And his favorite thing was that you eat, and after you eat, you walk for 10 minutes. So, if you're eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you walk for 10 minutes after that, then it helps your digestive system, and it helps really all those other systems. So whether you want to go alone or you walk with a friend or a pup, something, sometimes that people will really motivate them to have a friend or a dog to walk with. Welcome to Living on Purpose, a journey to vibrant living. I'm Dr. Allison Brumley, and I'm so happy to have you back here again today. We are doing this podcast to empower women to really take charge of their health, to understand how your body works, how does stress impact you, and how can you gain a resilience to having your best life. This is what we're looking for. Our topic today is going to be on thyroid health, and it's a very good sequel to the adrenals that we just talked about last time. I'm here with my co-host Karen, who's the health coach extraordinaire.
Well, thank you. I love coaching women, and I think I love it because I want to help you get your light out into the world, because I believe that when a woman kind of steps into her power, she really does have a ripple effect. I love the topic we're going to be talking about today, thyroid health. Not because I love all the things that can go wrong with the thyroid, but because I love when it goes right.
Yeah.
Because it helps us get our energy and vitality back when our thyroid is functioning the way it should function. And women, we need a lot of vitality.
We need a lot of help and vitality.
So maybe we'll just dive right in with this topic, with starting like we did with the adrenal gland. What is the thyroid gland, and why is it important to our health?
The thyroid and thyroid hormone is critical. Without it, you can't live. So the thyroid gland sits in the front of the neck. Just below, you have a prominent bone here. Men have the Adam's apple. Women just have a prominent bone, and it's below that. So it's just this beautiful little butterfly-shaped gland that, most commonly can not work enough, where women are hypothyroid, but it can overwork. That's hyperthyroid, where it sends out too much thyroid hormone. So you can have either or. And I'll see a few people these days that can maintain thyroid health on their own, but we have a lot at stake in our environment that disrupts our ability to make thyroid hormone with this wonderful little gland.
So how does that thyroid hormone impact our energy? Why is the thyroid so critical for energy?
Well, a thyroid runs the metabolism of every single cell in your body. So it's going to help you make energy in your cells in the mitochondria. And if you're not getting enough in there to make energy, then all your metabolism is going to slow down. So that could be liver function. Your liver doesn't detox as well, or you can build up too much cholesterol. It helps with all of that. It helps your kidneys filter better. If your adrenal glands are not working, if it's taking so much energy for your body to make cortisol and DHEA and aldosterone, like we talked about last time, it takes away the energy from the thyroid gland to make T4. The thyroid gland makes T4 out of tyrosine and 4-iodine molecules. And then the T4 will leave the thyroid, and it gets converted into T3 in the liver, the intestines, the muscles. So we have lots of places where we can convert it to T3. And T3 is your active thyroid hormone. It's the one you want landing on the receptor of the cell to increase the metabolism of all cellular function.
So I think that people that are tuning into this podcast are women that want to know how their bodies work. They're taking some initiative to to learn about how their bodies work, which is awesome. That's how I've learned how my body works
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
diving into these things, and you as well.
It's my passion. Yeah.
So what are some signs that they can maybe watch for what are the signs that thyroid isn't producing those hormones the way they should, and that sync going on?
The number one symptoms that I see clinically and that I talk about, it's in the literature, is fatigue. But we've already talked about fatigue with adrenal glands, but there can be multiple systems at play there. But fatigue is really the number one that I see. Fatigue and brain fog with both adrenals and thyroid. And weight gain can be one because your metabolism's slowed down. I'll see constipation. I'll see hair loss. I will see dry skin, dry eyes, dry mouth. You feel a little puffy. There's a thyroid type of edema. And so that's usually when it gets really bad.
So it's kind of showing that the body is starting to slow down because the energy process that picks us up isn't working. So what are the number one things to help us combat or nourish thyroid health?
Thyroid's a little complicated. It really is. I think the majority of people do have lower thyroid hormone than they should, and it's very likely it has a lot to do with the hormone disrupting chemicals in our environment. The thyroid needs those iodine molecules, and there are things that can interfere and bump out iodine. There's bromide that's in bread. Potassium bromide is in bread and processed foods. You can get chlorine or chloride can bump out iodine out of the thyroid. So there are a number of those. On the chemical chart, they're called halogens. And they're all different types of halogens, but they have the same chemical and molecular structure. So that's why, if you have exposure to much of that, whether it's just the aerosolized chlorine from the water as you're taking a shower, could it be helpful to get a filter? There are numerous filters on the market these days to help filter out the chlorine so you're not inhaling it. And then just making sure you're getting enough iodine, which can be hard in many of the places depending on where you live if you don't have an abundance of seafood and things like that with iodine.
Because that's where we get iodine from unless we supplement it. So it sounds like maybe detox is part of this journey with keeping the thyroid healthy.
Yeah, I would definitely say with anything anymore because the chemicals are they're abundant. You would have to live in a bubble to not be exposed to chemicals. It's in the air, the food, the water. So, I do think a lot of it is making wise choices about what you're eating, because it will go back to whole foods, whole food eating, where you can get the nutrients that your thyroid needs. And those nutrients are a little different than what we needed for the adrenal glands.
So what are they? What are those nutrients?
The thyroid, so I mentioned the iodine, that's huge. Tyrosine is an amino acid, and so that's going to be in proteins. It's abundant in nuts and seeds, pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds. It's abundant in legumes. So there's a lot of foods that have tyrosine in it. Okay. But if somebody just isn't getting enough, isn't eating enough, you can take tyrosine supplementally to see if you can make more hormone out of it. Selenium, extremely important. And most of our soils these days across the United States are deficient in selenium. And the only food that we really ever talk about that's abundant in selenium anymore is the Brazil nut. You eat 3 to 5 Brazil nuts a day, which may be easy for some and hard for others, but you'll get some selenium that way. In Brazil nuts.
Awesome. Yeah. Are there any nourishing herbs?
Yeah, we had talked about ashwagandha in the adrenal podcast, and ashwagandha is also helpful for the thyroid gland. There is an Ayurvedic herb called guggul, and that can be very helpful. Both of those are a little more supportive for a hypothyroid situation where the thyroid levels are low, or you feel sluggish and tired and your hair's falling out. And there can be other reasons for hair falling out too, but thyroid's a big one. We need copper and zinc, and those are in legumes and nuts and seeds. So there's a lot of crossover with the nutrients you need and what you're eating. You know, that if you're eating pumpkin seeds, you're getting zinc, you're getting copper, you're getting, just all those other good nutrients, some tyrosine that we need.
So that's why we really do promote a whole food, plant-based diet with lots of nuts and seeds, good healthy fats, these things that are really nourishing to the body all the way around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. The thyroid is not quite as sensitive to the sugar as the adrenal glands are. But if the adrenal glands are having to overwork, then your thyroid is going to underwork. So there kind of is, even though it's, not direct, it's not a direct action, it still can impact the way the thyroid is working. People will get little thyroid nodules. Sometimes they can feel them, and if they grow, then it's called a goiter. And that doesn't always mean that you're going to be hyper or hypothyroid. Sometimes it's just a benign little pocket, of this little nodule that could have developed from some inflammation in the thyroid. Viruses can go to the thyroid and create nodules and then actually create a scenario where your body starts making antibodies to the thyroid. And in the hypothyroid realm, that's called Hashimoto's. And it can get triggered.
So, that's one of the reasons we want women to learn about their bodies. And we talk about hormones, but these are two hormone glands that work like in sync, that they need to be working. The adrenals affect the thyroid, and the thyroid affects the adrenal gland.
Yeah, I remember last time when we were talking about the adrenals, you brought up the HPA axis. And that includes the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and the adrenal glands. And we can even add the thyroid to that, the HPAT axis, because it's that important and that closely related, that they work together, all of those. As the blood flows through the hypothalamus, it's the little gland tucked up under the brain. Blood flows through that, and then it can detect how much thyroid hormone is in the bloodstream. And then it sends out thyroid releasing hormone, goes to the pituitary. And if the pituitary detects an extra amount of thyroid releasing hormone, then it sends out a higher level of thyroid stimulating hormone, TSH for short. That's what you see on your lab work is TSH. And then if TSH is higher, then it's telling the thyroid gland to make more thyroid hormone. So some people get that confused. The TSH is high, it means you're hypothyroid. Okay. So it's a little interesting, but if you can think of it as when TSH is high, it's trying to get your body to make more thyroid hormone.
Because it needs that hormone to convert your food into energy.
Yeah, absolutely. And
so last time in talking about the adrenal glands, we concentrated a lot on stress and stress relieving activities and getting enough sleep. Maybe we could talk a bit to exercise. Exercise is something our bodies need. We need to be moving. A body in motion stays in motion. But what are some exercises that really help the thyroid out? And maybe the adrenal gland as well.
Because I would think about those very similarly. In these days where we do have higher levels of stress, it's not always good to go do, just this high intensity training, whether you're going to Orange Theory and doing some CrossFit or some HIIT, the high intensity can be extremely stressful and draining on the body if you don't have the reserves. So I will tell women, if you do a high intensity activity, how do you feel afterward? If you have to go lay down and take a nap to recover from that, things are not good. The adrenals and the thyroid are not good. And then you'd be much better off to do some yoga or Pilates where it's just not quite so stressful on the body, but you're still creating, strength and muscle, and you're stretching and moving, and all of those things keep you healthy. Our bodies are meant to move.
So that really is another sign to watch for with your adrenal and thyroid health, is how you feel after you exercise, especially a intense workout. Another way to start listening to your body.
Yeah.
And we can get a really good full body workout with yoga or with Pilates, which may be a little bit different than HIIT workouts.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. There are active yogas, and then there are not so active yogas, more of the yin yoga. Or I know that you will prescribe some yoga. I'd love to hear what you think about that.
I feel like yoga is an awesome exercise for the body because it uses the breath so much, and learning how to breathe when we exercise is critical. Even like if you're doing muscle training, breathing is really critical, and we are shallow breathers. We don't get really deep breaths in, and yoga is a way that helps train us to breathe when we learn how to do a good yoga practice. And I really like yoga nidra because it is sleep yoga, which is actually learning how to relax the body. We don't often know what relaxed feels like, so by doing some of those types of training, we can learn how to relax. But it's also important to keep that strength up because that really helps our metabolism to have really good muscle. As women, we don't often think about that in the importance of building muscle in our exercise routines. Another great, I feel like, exercise that goes underutilized is just walking.
Oh, absolutely.
Just those daily movement, but also being out in nature, especially first thing in the morning when that sunlight is coming up, really helps that our circadian rhythms get in sync better. So walking out in nature is a really underutilized practice, and it's free. It's free, and it can be done all year long. You know, you might have to bundle up more in the winter time and take some layers off in the summertime, but walking is really an underutilized exercise that can really nourish the body in so many ways.
Without stressing it out.
Right.
Yeah. And I think about, yoga and Pilates as an easier way, and even thinking about walking, an easier way to get the exercise in, but it still supports your muscles. You're using your body weight, so it can help with even osteopenia and osteoporosis, which is a loss of bone density. And so if you're even using your weight to do some of those sun salutations, or and then some of those inverted pose help so much with digestive issues. So I really and thoroughly think that including the walking is such a good thing to do for your body. And that even thinking about weight, how thyroid helps with weight management through the metabolism. Dr. Jason Fung, I remember reading his book, and that was 20 years ago, The Fat Thermostat. And his favorite thing was that you eat, and after you eat, you walk for 10 minutes. So, if you're eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you walk for 10 minutes after that, then it helps your digestive system, and it helps really all those other systems. So whether you want to go alone or you walk with a friend or a pup, something, sometimes that people will really motivate them to have a friend or a dog to walk with.
That's really interesting because I've read some of those same studies that help to regulate our blood sugar, which is a big part of the whole process of eating after or walking after we eat. And this can be done like even at the workplace. Get in a habit of that part of your lunch period includes some walking time after you eat and kind of getting in those habits of, oftentimes we think, oh, I'm going to exercise first thing in the morning and then we don't do anything the rest of the day. But really it's movement all day long that really makes a big difference for us.
And I will, and you might see this too, where the block for people to not exercise, they're like, I just don't have time. It's a block, is that they think they have to block out an hour. Mm-hmm. You do not have to block out an hour.
No, it's just keeping moving, take the kids to the park and walk around the park. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be a gym to be your place of exercise. It's just movement, just going after for a walk with your husband after dinner, or, incorporate some of those things into your life. That's daily movement all day long. I love that they now have standing desks or walking. You can walk behind your
treadmill desk.
It helps us keep that in mind more.
Yeah, agreed with that.
So I think we've covered some nutrition, some helpful herbal things. Is there anything that our listeners might, if they're really struggling with their thyroid, what would you recommend for them to test if they needed to do some blood work to see how their thyroid's functioning?
I'd say the bulk of conventional medicine will run TSH only. And if it's in range, then they say you're fine. And some will run TSH and T4, just always. And then you're looking, even if TSH is on the high end of the reference range or T4 is on the low end of the reference range, I'll still consider, are you symptomatic for having low or high thyroid?
So as a naturopathic doctor, how do you test?
I test the TSH with the free T4 and free T3. And if people are stressed, I add on a reverse T3. I actually typically just test the reverse T3 at the get-go, right at the beginning. I'll talk a little bit about that. Okay. So as the thyroid gland makes T4, if the body is stressed, and this can be a physical stress, a mental, emotional stress, spiritual stress, it could be any kind of stress, that the body will make more reverse T3 out of the T4 instead of your active T3.
Okay.
So when I see high reverse T3, I'm like, the body's stressed out about something, and sometimes it's not apparent and sometimes it is. Sometimes it will accompany a high cortisol or a low cortisol number in the labs. Sometimes it will accompany anemia. Anemia is really stressful for the body. The reverse T3 is always high in pregnancy. Pregnancy is a very stressful state. And then reverse T3 can actually land on the thyroid receptor on the cells and not have any action. It's a dead end or just a garbage disposal for thyroid hormone. And so, you picture that receptor cell sitting on the cell, and you've got reverse T3 that's bound to that, and then T3 just goes by in the bloodstream and can't bind because reverse T3 is already bound. So that's where I consider that those labs may be within the normal range, but it doesn't mean that it's okay. If you're symptomatic for low thyroid, maybe you have too much reverse T3 on the receptor and you just can't utilize the T3. So then your TSH is normal. It says, yeah, we got plenty of T3 in the bloodstream, but it's not on the receptor. So you got to clear it out and there are multiple ways to do that if you can really figure out where the stress is coming from.
So more of those de-stressing in our lives. But, blood work is a good thing to see how your thyroid's doing. But symptoms are really where
labs.
It's at, right?
In clinic, I run a lot of labs. I really like seeing them, but I always take them into consideration with how the patient feels. What are your symptoms? If you are symptomatic for low thyroid, then, where somebody will come in and say, I'm tired, my brain doesn't work, my hair's falling out, I can't lose weight. I will call it more of a thyroid resistance rather than hypothyroid because levels are normal. So I do like looking at labs, but I care more about symptoms.
And so maybe that's what we could leave our audience with, an actionable item is, how would they go about tracking their symptoms? Do you like them to journal that, write it down? What's a good way for them to start noticing?
I do think that journaling gives you some insight of things that you don't remember. You go through your day, and then you're to the next day and you don't remember what you did the day before or the day before that. And so if you're keeping track of, I slept this many hours, I exercised this many minutes, or, whatever type of exercise you did, what you're eating, did you skip any meals? I mean, it can be a little time consuming to do that. And they do have apps that will help you fine tune that and make it a little easier. Even the menstrual apps, the period apps where you track your period, you can use that calendar and just, make notations of, oh, I skipped lunch. And then I love those Snicker bars commercials of people being hangry, which is like the worst thing you could do is skip lunch, then be hangry and eat a Snickers bar. Worst thing you could do. But tracking those types of things can really be helpful. And then even I will ask people, where is your energy on a scale from 1 to 10? 10 being you could do anything you wanted. You have really good energy. 1 is you can barely get out of bed. Or maybe you can't even get out of bed. You're just so tired. So you could monitor your energy on that too. Say, oh, today my energy was a 4, and look what happened. Look what I did today or what I did yesterday.
Which is really part of the mindfulness piece that we're encouraging women to get curious about is, be curious as to maybe why you're hangry. Oh, I forgot to eat lunch today, or I haven't eaten all day, and it's 3:00.
Yeah.
Being mindful of our sleep, mindful of that exercise and how we feel after the exercise. So maybe you just think that you're drained because you exercised, but really exercise should invigorate us, not drain us.
Yes.
So tracking some of those things. So maybe that's where we'll encourage you as our listeners this upcoming week is start getting a tracking system down, either paper and pencil or an app, and track your eating, track your sleeping, track your stress levels, track your energy levels, and let us know how you're doing in the comments because we'd love to hear from you and continue to interact with us. Let us know what you want to know more about, and most importantly, subscribe so that you can be alerted to next week's episode.
That sounds wonderful, Karen. Thank you.
So keep living and keep being vibrant and beautiful. Until next week.